Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, the four teams in the college football playoff. And for all of you that are upset that Florida State was not in the college football playoff, I got news for you. You do not know how the college football selection committee works. And I've been very critical of the committee over the last decade. I've said for years I would like to be a part of the committee. I don't think that the committee oftentimes gets it right, except for this year because the committee got it exactly right. Listen, we knew going in Michigan was going to stop Iowa, and that's exactly what happened. Iowa could barely do anything on the offense side of the ball. Then you have Washington versus Oregon, and we all said if Washington wins, as good as Oregon's quarterback Bo Nix has been, and as fun as Oregon has been this year, even though there are only 2 losses on the year, were to Washington, they do have 2 losses, which again, last year, people like myself were trying to put 2 losses to Alabama in over TCU. We did not have that situation this year because we had so many good teams in the college football playoff that essentially the loser of the game would have to be out, the winner would have to be in. Then it came down to Alabama versus Georgia. I'm not even going to really talk about Texas versus Oklahoma State. Texas took care of business, as we all thought they would against Oklahoma State. So it really came down to Alabama against Georgia. Georgia is back-to-back defending national champions, going for a three-peat, but their defense was not as good as it was a year ago, obviously, with all those players leaving to the NFL. Alabama, who was lost after their week 2 demolition, in Alabama against Quinn Ewers and that Texas Bowl Club. Jalen Milroe could barely throw in that game. He was benched the next game by Alabama. Alabama barely beat that team. I think it was like Southwest Florida or something like that. But ever since then, they turned it on and they did beat the number 1 team in the country. And when you beat the number 1 team in the country, you are one of the best 4 teams in college football. Florida State, I don't care if they're a part of the ACC. I don't even care if Jordan Travis was healthy. I don't care about this fact that they have a great defense. They look awful the last couple of weeks. They do not have an impressive win to me. And Alabama beating the number 1 team in the country, which the committee said was the number 1 team in the country. I did not. I said they were number 2 behind Michigan, which is why I was in favor of Michigan being the number 1 team over Washington, even though Washington and NX and that offense looks great. And even though they beat Oregon twice, I said Michigan boat race teams all year, and they probably beat, one of the best teams that was left out of the playoff, Ohio State, in a very close game, even though the kid McCord just transferred out. We know that big rivalry, Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan really dominated the second half. They barely trailed all season long, unlike Washington. The Maryland game was kind of close. That's about it for close games. For Michigan, to me, they looked like, again, the best team in the regular season all season long. The Jim Harbaugh scandal didn't matter to the committee. It didn't matter to me either. They got this right. For all of you upset about Florida State, we don't even know Jordan Travis is going to be able to play in a bowl game. They're going to play Georgia. I don't care about the other bowl games. I really don't. I care about 2 bowl games. I care about Washington, Texas. I care about Alabama, Michigan. It's the only 2 bowl games, in my opinion, that matter. And I thought this weekend, of course, this is going to be the last time that we get the 14 college football playoff. Next year, it expands to 12. And I thought the last 2 weekends, actually, of course, when we had Ohio State, Michigan, and Alabama, Auburn as a part of rivalry weekend. And then this week with conference championship weekend. I thought this weekend was a perfect example of why the committee was wrong to expand the college football playoff. Because under this format next year, we wouldn't have this debate between Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, etc. All those teams would still be in the college football playoff. And I thought the best part about the college football regular season showcased itself this weekend. Georgia, I already mentioned, I thought they were a top two, top three team in the country all year long. I didn't think that they were number one, but I thought they were right there. And obviously, if they beat Bama, no matter the margin, they're in the college football playoff as the SEC conference champion. We know the SEC and the Big Ten by far are the two best conferences in college football, even though the Pac-12 in its last year has had a little bit of a resurgence. Um, under the format next year, again, Georgia, Alabama, the game's not going to matter as much. It may matter for seeding, but this game, Georgia goes from number one in the country, down to number six. They go from being back to back, trying to defend their title as a three-peat, to they have one loss by a field goal to a very good Alabama team that's gotten better as the year goes on, and they get screwed out of the playoff. Similarly to Ohio State, who loses to Michigan by 6. That's really their only big loss of the year. They had another close win earlier in the year against Notre Dame and Penn State. But if you don't beat Michigan, you're not in the playoff. Oregon, you lose 2 very close games to Washington. You boat race the rest because you lose 2 games to your arch rival. You're out of the playoff. We're in the new scenario. You could have 2 losses. You could have 3 losses potentially and still be a top 12 team. It's why I think that the committee got that part of the equation wrong. The best part about college football is the regular season matters. 1 loss can screw your season, and we're not going to get the specialness of college football anymore. Will Michigan and Ohio State sure be a big deal? Alabama, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, SEC championship game, white games. Yes. The problem is they're not going to be as meaningful. If the Big Ten decides to just go away with the Big Ten East and the Big Ten West and just have Ohio State, Michigan play twice like the way Oregon and Washington did, maybe you move the game up besides, the last game after Thanksgiving. It's usually the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And you put it a little bit earlier in the season so we don't get back-to-back rematches. That may make it all work. But in the end, I thought the committee got it right. If I had to guess right now, to be honest with you, I think Michigan versus Alabama is the national championship. I don't think whoever wins Washington or Texas can beat either of the teams. I don't think Washington's offensive and defensive wise can be physical enough with the way Michigan and Alabama run the football. I know Texas beat Alabama earlier in the year, but that was before Jalen Milroe could throw, and that game was close until the fourth quarter. I think in a rematch, Saban could figure out how to stop Sarkisian, obviously his former protege there at Bama. I think Alabama would win that game. I think Michigan-Alabama is very close. I think J.J. McCarthy is the difference. I think Michigan has a little bit of a better offensive line. I think they'll be able to run the football with Blake Corum a little bit better. J.J. McCarthy will make more throws. Michigan wins in a very tight Rose Bowl. Now, down in New Orleans, either Washington and Texas, I think it's very close. Quinn Ewers, Michael Penix, 2 very good start quarterbacks. I think Washington has one of the best coaching staffs down in the country. I give a little bit of an edge to them right now. I do think it's going to be Michigan, Washington, if I had to guess. So these semifinal games can be weirder, as I already mentioned, than the national championship, because you do get a month off with Christmas break and finals and the kids and all that. These teams get a month to prepare, where they only get essentially a week to prepare for the national championship. So you almost have to scout 3 teams. It's why I think the semifinal game can cause some unwanted results sometimes. It's why I think, all 4 of these teams are going to need to come out ready to play. But at the end of the day, the committee finally got it right. These are the best 4 teams in the country. There's no controversy. I don't care if you're undefeated. I don't care if you have a great defense. Football is not about defense anymore. It's not about the 90s. Nick Saban's a defensive coach. Alabama can't really stop anybody. They're hoping they get to 30 and they give up 23, 24 like they did against Georgia. That's the sport. It doesn't matter if it's NFL or college anymore. You got to have a star quarterback. You got to be able to run the football, and you got to be able to put points up on the board. Who cares about Florida State? I don't even think they're a top 4 team in the country. If Jordan Travis plays, I think Michigan, Bama, Washington, Texas committee finally got it right. And I commend you, and you can challenge me, whether it's on audio or video, in the comment section below, but I'm sorry. The committee got it right. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.